Going Postal, Chapter 10, The Burning of Words, in which Stanley remains calm. Moist the hero. Searching for a cat? Never a good idea. Something in the dark. Mr. Gryle is encountered. Fire and water. Mr. Lipwick helps the watch. Dancing on the edge. Mr. Lipwick gets religion. Opportunity time. Miss McAlariat's hair grip. The miracle. The letters burned. Part of the ceiling fell down, showering more letters onto the flames. The fire was already reaching for the upper floors. As Stanley dragged Mr. Grote across the floor, another slab of plaster smashed on the tiles, and the old mail that poured down after it was already burning. Smoke, thick as soup, rolled across the distant ceiling. Stanley pulled the old man into the locker room and laid him on his bed. He rescued the golden hat too, because Mr. Lipwick would be bound to be angry if he didn't. Then he shut the door and took down from the shelf over Grote's desk the Book of Regulations. He turned the pages methodically until he came to the page, What to do in case of a fire. Stanley always followed the rules. All sorts of things could go wrong if you didn't. So far he'd done 1, upon discovery of the fire, remain calm. Now he came to part 2, shout fire in a loud, clear voice. Fire, he shouted, and ticked off number 2 with his pencil. Next was 3. Endeavor to extinguish fire if possible. Stanley went to the door and opened it. Flames and smoke billowed in. He stared at them for a moment, shook his head, and shut the door. Paragraph 4 said, If trapped by fire, endeavor to escape. Do not open doors if warm. Do not use stairs if burning. If no exit prevents itself, remain calm and await A, rescue, or B, death. That seemed to cover it. The world of pins was simple, and Stanley knew his way around it like a goldfish knows its tank. But everywhere else was very complicated and only worked if you followed the rules. He glanced up at the grubby little windows. They were far too small to climb through and had been welded shut by many applications of official paint. So he broke one pane as neatly as possible to allow fresh air in. He made a note of this in the breakages book. Mr. Grote was still breathing, although with an unpleasant bubbling sound. There was a first aid kit in the locker room because regulation demanded it, but it contained only a small length of bandage, a bottle of something black and sticky, and Mr. Grote's spare teeth. Mr. Grote had told him never to touch his homemade medicines, and since it was not unusual for bottles to explode during the night, Stanley had always observed this rule very carefully. It did not say in the regulations, if attacked by a huge, swooping, screaming creature, hit hard in the mouth with a sack of pins, and Stanley wondered if he should pencil this in. But that would be defacing post office property, and he could get into trouble for that. All avenues of further activity being therefore closed, Stanley remained calm. It was a gentle snow of letters. Some landed still burning, fountaining out of the column crackling fire that had already broken through the post office roof. Some were blackened ashes on which sparks travelled in mockery of dying ink. Many, had sailed up over the city unscathed, zigzagging down gently like communications from an excessively formal sort of god. Moist tore off his jacket as he pushed through the crowd. The people probably got out, said Miss Dearheart, clattering along beside him. You really think so, said Moist. Really? No, not if guilt set this up, sorry. I'm not very good at being comforting anymore. Moist paused and tried to think. The flames were coming out of the roof at one end of the building. The main door on the whole left side looked untouched. But fire was sneaky stuff, he knew. It sat there, smouldered, until you opened the door to see how it was getting on, and then the fire caught its breath and your eyeballs got soldered into your skull. I'd better go in, he said. You wouldn't care to say, no, don't do it, you're being far too brave, would you? He added. Some people were organizing a bucket chain from a nearby fountain. It would be as effective as spitting into the sun. Miss Dearheart caught a burning letter and lit a cigarette with it and took a drag. No, don't do it, you're being far too brave, she said. How's that? But if you do, the left side looks pretty clear. Watch out, though. Rumors guild employs a vampire, one of the wild ones. Fire kills them, doesn't it? Said Moist, desperate to look on the bright side. It kills everybody, Mr. Lipwick, said Miss Dearheart. It kills everybody. She grabbed him by the ears and gave him a big kiss on the mouth. It was like being kissed by an ashtray, but in a good way. On the whole, I'd like you to come out of there, she said quietly. Are you sure you won't wait? The boys will be here in a minute. The golems? It's their day off. They have to obey their chem, though. A fire means humans are in danger. They'll smell it and be here in minutes, believe me. Moist hesitated, looking at her face, and people were watching him. He couldn't not go in there. It wouldn't fit in with the persona. God's damn veterinary. He shook his head, turned, and ran towards the doors. Best not to think about it. Best not to think about being so dumb. Just feel the front door. Quite cool. Open it gently. A rush of air, but no explosion. The big hall lit with flame, but it was all above him. And if he weaved and dodged, he could make it through the door that led down to the locker room. He kicked it open. Stanley looked up from his stamps. "Hello, Mr. Lipwick," he said. "I kept calm, but I think Mr. Grote is ill." The old man was lying on the bed, and ill was too jolly a word. "What's happened to him?" said Moist, lifting him gently. Mr. Grote was no weight at all. "It was like a big bird, but I frightened it off," said Stanley. "I hit it in the mouth with a sack of pins. I had a little moment, sir." "Well, that ought to do it," said Moist. "Now, can you follow me?" "I've got all the stamps," said Stanley, "and the cash box. Mr. Grote keeps them under his bed for safety." The boy beamed. "And your hat, too." I kept calm. Well done," said Moist. "Now, stick right behind me, okay?" "What about Tiddles, Mr. Lipwick?" said Stanley, suddenly looking worried. Somewhere outside in the hall, there was a crash, and the crackle of fire grew distinctly louder. The cat? To hell with... Moist stopped and readjusted his mouth. "He'll be outside, you can bet on it, eating a toasted rat and grinning. Come on, will you?" "But he's the post office cat," said Stanley. "He's never been outside." "I'll bet he has now," thought Moist. But there wasn't that edge in the boy's voice again. "Let's get Mr. Grote out of here, okay?" he said, easing his way through the door with the old man in his arms. "And then I'll come back and look for A burning beam dropped onto the floor halfway across the hall and sent sparks and burning envelopes spiraling upwards into the main blaze. It roared, a wall of flame, a fiery waterfall in reverse, up through the other floors and out through the roof. It thundered. It was fire let loose, and it was making the most of it. Part of Moist von Lipwick was happy to let it happen, but a new and troublesome part was thinking, I was making it work. It was all moving forward. The stamps were really working. It was as good as being a criminal without a crime. It had been fun. "Come on, Stanley," Moist snapped, turning away from the horrible sight and the fascinating thought. The boy followed reluctantly, calling for the damn cat all the way to the door. The outside air struck like a knife, but there was a round of applause from the crowd and then a flash of light that Moist had come to associate with eventual trouble. "Good evening, Mr. Lipwick," said the cheery voice of Otto Krieg. "My word, if he want news, all we have to do is follow you." Moist ignored him and shouldered his way to Miss Derhart, who, he noticed, was not beside herself with worry. There's a hospice in the city, a decent doctor even. "There is Lady Sybil Free Hospital," said Miss Derhart. "Is it any good?" "Some people don't die." "That good, eh? Get him in there right now. I've got to get back for the cat." "You are going to go back in there for a cat?" "It's Tiddles," said Stanley primly. "He was born in the post office." "Best not to argue," said Moist, turning to go. "See to Mr. Grote, will you?" Miss Derhart looked down at the old man's blood-stained shirt. "But it looks as though some creature tried to," she began. "Something fell on him," Moist said shortly. "That wouldn't cause something fell on him," said Moist. "That's what happened." She looked at his face. "All right," she agreed. "Something fell on him, something with big claws." "No, a joist with lots of nails in it, something like that. Anyone can see that." "That's what happened, was it?" said Miss Derhart. "That's exactly what happened," said Moist, and strode away before there were any more questions. No point in getting the watch in this, he thought, hurrying toward the door. They'll clump around and there won't be any answers for them, and in my experience, watchman always likes to arrest somebody. "What makes you think it was Reacher Guild, Mr. Lipwick, wasn't it?" "Oh, you could tell, could you? That's a skill of yours. Is it funny thing we can tell sometimes too? You got a very familiar face, Mr. Lipwick. Where are you from?" No, there was no point in getting friendly with the watch. They might get in the way. An upper window exploded outwards and flames licked along the edge of the roof. Moist ducked into the doorway as glass rained down. As for Tiddles, well, he had to find the damn cat. If he didn't, it wouldn't be fun anymore. If he didn't risk at least a tiny bit of life and a smidgen of limb, he just wouldn't be able to carry on being him. Wait, had he just thought that? Oh gods, he had lost it. He'd never been sure how he'd got it, but now it was certainly gone. That's what happened if you took wages. and hadn't his grandfather warned him to keep away from women as neurotic as a shaved monkey? Actually, he hadn't. His interest lying mainly with dogs and beer, but he should have. The vision of Mr. Groat's chest kept bumping insistently against his imagination. It looked as though something with claws had taken a swipe at him, and only the thick uniform coat prevented him from being opened like a clam. But that didn't sound like a vampire. They weren't messy like that. It was waste of good food. Nevertheless, he picked up a piece of smashed chair. It had splintered nicely. And the nice thing about a stake through the heart was that it also worked on non-vampires. More ceiling had come down in the hall, but he was able to dodge between the debris. The main staircase was at this end completely untouched, although smoke lay on the floor like a carpet. At the other end of the hall, where the mountains of old mail had been, the blaze still roared. He couldn't hear the letters anymore. Sorry, he thought. I did my best. It wasn't my fault. What now? At least he could get his box out from his office. That couldn't be allowed to burn. Some of those chemicals would be quite hard to replace. The office was full of smoke, but he dragged the box out from under his desk and then spotted the golden suit on its hanger. He had to take it, didn't he? Something like that couldn't be allowed to burn either. He could come back for the box, right? But the suit was necessary. There was no sign of Tiddles. He must have got out, yes? Didn't cats leave sinking ships? No, wait, that was rats, wasn't it? Wouldn't the cats follow the rats, though? Anyway, the smoke was coming up between the floorboards and drifting down from the upper floors, and this was not the time to hang around. He'd looked everywhere sensible. There was no sense in being where a ton of burning paper could drop on your head. It was a good plan, and it was only spoiled when he spotted the cat down in the hall. It was watching him with interest. Tiddles, bellowed Moist. He wished he hadn't. It was such a stupid name to shout in a burning building. The cat looked at him and trotted away. Cursing, Moist hurried after it and saw it disappear down into the cellars. Cats were bright, weren't they? There was probably another way out. Bound to be. Moist didn't even look up when he heard the creaking of wood overhead, but ran forward and went down the steps 5 at a time. By the sound of it, a large amount of the entire building smashed into the floor just behind him, and sparks roared down the cellar passage, burning at his neck. Well, there was no going back now, at least. But cellars, now, they had trapdoors and coal chutes and things, didn't they? And they were cool and safe, and just the place where you'd go to lick your wounds after being smashed in the mouth with a painful sack of pins, right? An imagination is a terrible thing to bring along. A vampire, she'd said. And Stanley had hit a big bird with a sack full of pins. Stanley the Vampire Slayer, with a bag of pins. You wouldn't believe it unless you'd seen him in one of what Mr. Groat called his little moments. You probably couldn't kill a vampire with pins. And after a thought like that, when you realize that however hard you try to look behind you, there is a behind you where you aren't looking. Moist flung his back to the cold stone wall and slithered along until he ran out of wall and acquired a door frame. The faint blue glow of the sorting engine was just visible. Moist peered into the machine's room. Tiddles was visible too, was crouched under the engine. That's a very cat thing you are doing there, Tiddles, said Moist, staring at the shadows. Come to Uncle Moist, please. He sighed and hung the suit on an old letter rack, crouched down. How were you supposed to pick up a cat? He'd never done it. Cats never figured in Grandfather Lipwick's kennels, except, well, as an impromptu snack. As his hand drew near Tiddles, the cat flattened its ears and hissed. Do you want to cook down here, said Moist. No claws, please. The cat began to growl. Moist realized that it wasn't looking directly at him. Good, Tiddles, he said, feeling the terror begin to rise. It was one of the prime directives of exploring in a hostile environment. Do not bother about the cat. And suddenly, the environment was a lot more hostile. Another important rule was, don't turn around too slowly to look. It's there, all right, not the cat. Damn the cat. This is something else. He stood upright and took a two-handed grip on the wooden stake. It's right behind me, yes, he thought. Bloody well, bloody right, bloody behind me. Of course it is. How could things be otherwise? The feeling of fear was almost the same as the feeling he got when Sayer Mark was examining a glass diamond. Time slowed down a little, every sense was heightened, and there was the taste of copper in his mouth. Don't turn around slowly, turn around fast. He spun, screamed, and thrust. The stake met resistance, which yielded only slightly. A long, pale face grinned at him in the blue light. It showed rows of pointy teeth. "Missed both my hearts," said Mr. Qa'Rajh, spitting blood. Moist jumped back, as a thin, clawed hand sliced through the air but kept the stake in front of him, jabbing with it, holding the thing back. Banshee, he thought. Oh, hell. Only when he moved did Qa'Rajh's leathery black cape swing aside to briefly show the skeletal figure beneath. It helped if you knew that the black leather was a wing. It helped if you thought of banshees as the only humanoid race that had slowly evolved the ability to fly, in some lush jungle somewhere where they'd hunted flying squirrels. It didn't help much if you knew why the story went that hearing the scream of the banshee meant that you were going to die. It meant that the banshee was tracking you. No good looking behind you, it was overhead. There weren't many of the feral ones, even in Überwald, but Moist knew the advice passed on by people who'd survived them. Keep away from the mouth, those teeth were vicious. Don't attack the chest, the flight muscles are like armor. They're not strong, but they got sinews like steel cables, and the long reach on those arm bones will mean it can slap your silly head right off. Tittles yowled and backed away further under the sorting engine. Qa'Rajh slashed at Moist again and came after him as he backed away. But their necks snap easily if you can get inside their reach. They have to shut their eyes when they scream. Qa'Rajh came toward him, head bobbing as he strutted. There was nowhere else for Moist to go, so he tossed aside the wood and held up just his hands. "All right, I give in," he said. "Just make it quick, okay?" The creature kept looking at the golden suit. They had a magpie's eye for glitter. "I'm going somewhere afterwards," said Moist helpfully. Qa'Rajh hesitated. He was hurt, disoriented, and had eaten pigeons that were effluent on wings. He wanted to get out of here and up into the cool sky. Everything was too complicated here. There were too many targets, too many smells. For a banshee, everything was in the pounce, when teeth, claws, and body weight all bore down at once. Now, bewildered, he strutted back and forth, trying to deal with the situation. There was no room to fly, nowhere else to go. The prey was standing there. Instinct, emotion, and some attempt at rational thought all banged together in Qa'Rajh's overheated head. Instinct won. Leaping at things with your claws out had worked for 1,000,000 years. So why stop now? He threw his head back, screamed, and sprang. So did Moist, docking under the long arms. That wasn't programmed into the banshee's responses. The prey should be huddled or running away, but Moist's shoulder caught him in the chest. The creature was as light as a child. Moist felt a claw slash into his arm as he hurled the thing onto the sorting engine and flung himself onto the floor. For one horrible moment, he thought it was going to get up, that he'd missed the wheel, but as the enraged Mr. Qa'Rajh shifted, there was a sound like followed by silence. Moist lay on the cool flagstones until his heart slowed down to the point where he could make out individual beats. He was aware, as he lay there, that something sticky was dripping down the side of the machine. He arose slowly on unsteady legs and stared at what had become of the creature. If he had been a hero, he would have taken the opportunity to say, "That's what I call sorted." But since he wasn't a hero, he just threw up. A body doesn't work properly when significant bits are not sharing the same space-time frame as the rest of it, but it does look a lot more colorful. The trade-off is, however, not to its advantage. Then, clutching at his bleeding arm, he knelt down and looked under the engine for Tittles. He had to come back to the cat, he thought, muzzily. It was just something that had to happen. A man who rushes into a burning building to rescue a stupid cat and comes out carrying the cat is seen as a hero, even if he is a rather dumb one. If he comes out sans cat, well, he's just a twit. A muffled thunder above them suggested that part of the building had fallen down. The air was roasting. Tittles backed away from Moist's hand. "Listen," Moist growled. "The hero has to come out with the cat. The cat doesn't have to be alive." He lunged and grabbed Tittles and dragged the cat out. "Right," he said, and picked up the suit hanger in his other hand. There were a few blobs of banshee on it, but he thought lightheadedly he could probably find something to remove it. He lurched out into the corridor. There was a wall of fire at both ends, and Tiddles chose this moment to sink all 4 claws into his arm. "Ah," said Moist. "Up until now it was going so well. Mr. Lipwick, are you all right? Mr. Lipwick?" What golems had removed from a fire was, in fact, the fire. They took out of a burning property everything that was burning. It was curiously surgical. They assembled at the edge of the fire, deprived it of anything to burn, herded it, cornered it, and stamped it to death. Golems could wade through lava and pour molten iron. Even if they knew what fear was, they wouldn't find it in a mere burning building. Glowing rubble was hauled away from the steps by red-hot hands. Moist stared up into a landscape of flame, but also, in front of it, Mr. Pump. He was glowing orange. Specks of dust and dirt on his clay flashed and sparkled. "Good to see you, Mr. Lipwick," he boomed, cheerfully tossing a crackling beam aside. "We have cleared a path to the door. Move with speed." Thank you," Moist shouted above the roar of the flames. There was a path, dragged clear of debris, with the open door beckoning calmly and coolly at the end of it. Away toward the far end of the hall, other golems, red-hot up in the pillars of flame, were calmly throwing burning floorboards out through a hole in the wall. The heat was intense. Moist lowered his head, clutched the terrified cat to his chest, felt the back of his neck begin to roast, and scampered forward. From then on, it became all one memory. The crashing noise high above, the metallic boom, the golem Ankh-Hammerad looking up with his message glowing yellow on his cherry-red arm. 10,000 tons of rainwater pouring down in deceptive slow motion, the cold hitting the glowing golem. The explosion. Flames died. Sound died. Light died. Ankh-Hammerad. Ankh-Hammerad looked at his hands. There were nothing there except heat, furnace heat, blasting heat that nevertheless made the shapes of fingers. Ankh-Hammerad, a hollow voice repeated. "I have lost my clay," said the golem. "Yes," said Death, "that is standard. You are dead, smashed, exploded into a million pieces." "Then who is doing the listening?" "Everything there was about you that isn't clay." "Do you have a command from me?" said the remains of Ankh-Hammerad, standing up. "Not now. You have reached the place where there are no more orders." "What shall I do?" "I believe you have failed to understand my last comment." Ankh-Hammerad sat down again. Apart from the fact that there was sand rather than ooze underfoot, this place reminded him of the abyssal plain. "Generally, people like to move on," Death hinted. "They look forward to an afterlife." "I will stay here, please." "Here? There's nothing to do here," said Death. "Yes, I know," said the ghost of the golem. "It is perfect. I am free." At 2 a.m. it began to rain. Things could have been worse. It could have rained snakes, or it could have rained acid. There was still some roof and some walls. That meant that there was technically still some building. Moist and Miss Deerheart sat on some warm rubble outside the locker room, which was more or less the only room that could still be properly described as one. The golems had stamped out the last bit of fire, shored things up, and then, without a word, had gone back to not being a hammer, at least until sunset. Miss Deerheart held a half-melted bronze hand in her hand and turned it over and over again. 18,000 years, she whispered. "It was a rainwater tank," mumbled Moist, staring at nothing. "Fire and water," muttered Miss Deerheart. "But not both. Can't you rebake him or something?" It sounded hopeless, even as Moist said it. He'd seen the other golems scrabbling in the rubble. Not enough left, just dust mixed up with everything else, Miss Deerheart. All he wanted to do was to be useful. Moist looked at the remains of the letters. The flood had washed the black slurry of their ashes into every single corner. All they wanted to do was to be delivered, he thought. At a time like this, sitting on the seabed for 9,000 years seemed quite attractive. He was going to wait until the universe came around again. "Did you know that?" "You told me, yes," said Moist. "There's no stink more sorrowful than the stink of wet, burnt paper," Moist thought. "It means the end." Veterinary won't rebuild this place, you know, Miss Deerhart went on. Guilt would get people to make a fuss if he tries it. Waste of city funds, he got friends, people who owe him money and favors. He's good at that sort of people. It was Guilt who had this place torched, said Moist. He was shocked to see me back in the restaurant. He thought I'd be here. You'll never be able to prove it. Probably not, Moist agreed, in the sour, smoke-addled hollow of his head. The watch had turned up with more speed than Moist had found usual among city policemen. They had a werewolf with them. Oh, probably most people would have thought it was just a handsome dog, but grow up in Überwald with a grandfather who bred dogs, and you learned to spot the signs. This one had a collar and snuffed around while the embers were still smoking and found something extra to scent in the pall of steaming ashes. They dug down, and there'd been an awkward interview. Moist had handled it as well as he could manage under the circumstances. The key point was to never tell the truth. Coppers never believed what people told them. In any case, so there was no point in giving them extra work. A winged skeleton, Moist had said, with what surely sounded like genuine surprise. Yes, sir, about the size of a man, but very, damaged. I could even say mangled. I wonder if you know anything about it. The watchman was a captain. Moist hadn't been able to make him out. His face gave nothing away that he didn't want to let go of. Something about him suggested that he already knew the answers, but was asking questions for the look of the thing. Perhaps it was an extra-large pigeon. They're a real pest in this building, he said. I doubt it, sir. We believe it to have been a banshee, Mr. Lipwick, said the captain. They are very rare. I thought they just screamed on the rooftops of people who were going to die, said Moist. The civilized ones do, sir. The wild ones cut out the middleman. Your young man said you hit something. Stanley did say something about something flying around, said Moist, but I thought it was simply an extra-large pigeon, I see. And you've no idea how the fire started. I know you use safety lamps in here. Probably spontaneous combustion in the letter piles, I'm afraid, said Moist, who had time to think about this one. No one was behaving oddly. In the post office, Captain, it is very hard to tell. Believe me. No threats made, sir, by anyone you might have you upset, perhaps. None at all. The captain had sighed and put away his notebook. I'll have a couple of men watching the building overnight, nevertheless, he said. Well done for saving the cat, sir. That was a big cheer you got when you came out. Just one thing, though, sir. Yes, Captain. Why would a banshee, or possibly a giant pigeon, attack Mr. Grote? And Moist thought, the hat. I have no ideas, he said. Yes, sir, I'm sure you haven't, said the captain. I'm sure you haven't. I am Captain Iron Founderson, sir, although most people call me Captain Carrot. Don't hesitate to contact me, sir, if anything occurs to you. We are here for your protection. And what would you have done against a banshee? Moist have thought. You suspect Guilt. Well done. But people like Guilt don't bother with the law. They never break it. They just use other people who do. And you'll never find anything written down anywhere. Just before the captain turned to go, Moist was sure that the werewolf winked at him. Now with the rain drifting in and hissing where the stones were still warm, Moist looked around at the fires. There were still plenty of them where the golems had dumped the rubble. This, being Ankh-Morpork, people of the night had risen like the mists and gathered around them for warmth. This place would need a fortune spent on it. Well, he knew where to lay his hands on plenty of money, didn't he? He didn't have much use for it. It was only ever been a way of keeping score. But then this would all end, because it had belonged to Albert Spangler and the rest of them, not to an innocent postmaster. He took off his golden hat and looked at it. An avatar, Pelk had said. The human embodiment of a god. But he wasn't a god. He was just a con man in a golden suit, and now the con was over. Where was the angel now? Where were the gods when he needed them? The gods could help. The hat glinted in the firelights, and parts of Moist brain sparkled. He didn't breathe as the thought emerged, in case it took flight, but it was so simple. Something that no honest man would have ever thought of. What we need is, he said, is what? Said Miss Deerhart. Is music, declared Moist. He stood up and cupped his hand. Hey, you people, any banjo players out there? A fiddle, maybe? I'll give a $1 stamp, highly collectible, to anyone who can pick out a waltz tune. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Have you gone completely mad? Said Miss Deerhart. You're clearly... She stopped because a shabbily dressed man had tapped Moist on the shoulder. "I can play the banjo," he said, "and my friend Humphrey here can blow the harmonica something cruel. The fee will be $1, sir. Coin, please, if it's all the same to you on account of I can't write and I don't know anyone who can read." "My lovely Miss Dearheart," said Moist, smiling madly at her, "do you have any other name? Some pet name or nickname, some delightful little diminutive you don't mind being called?" "Are you drunk?" she demanded. "Unfortunately, no," said Moist, "but I'd like to be. Well, Miss Dearheart, I even rescued my best suit." She was clearly taken aback, but an answer escaped before natural cynicism could bar the door. "My brother used to call me, Yes?" "Killer," said Miss Dearheart, "but he meant it in a nice way. Don't you even think about using it." "How about Spike?" "Spike? Well, I could live with Spike," said Miss Dearheart. "So you will too, but this is not the time for dancing." "On the contrary, Spike," said Moist, beaming in the firelight. "This is just the time. We'll dance, and then we'll get things cleared up, ready for opening time, get the mail delivery working again, order the rebuilding of the building, and have everything back the way it was. Just watch me." "You know, perhaps it is true that working for the post office drives people mad," said Miss Dearheart. "Just where will you get the money to have this place rebuilt?" "The gods will provide," said Moist. "Trust me on this." She peered at him. "You serious?" "Deadly," said Moist. "You're going to pray for money?" "Not exactly, Spike. They got thousands of prayers every day. I have other plans. We'll bring the post office back, Miss Dearheart. I don't have to think like a policeman or a postman or a clerk. I just have to do things my way, and then I'll bankrupt reach your guild by the end of next week." Her mouth became a perfect O. "How exactly will you do that?" "I've no idea, but if anything is possible if I can dance with you and still have 10 toes left. Shall we dance, Miss Dearheart?" She was amazed and surprised and bewildered, and Moist von Lipwig liked that in a person. For some reason, he felt immensely happy. He didn't know why, and he didn't know what he was going to do next, but it was going to be fun. He could feel that old electric feeling, that one you got right there in front of a banker who was carefully examining an example of your very best work. The universe held its breath, and then the man would smile and say, "Very good, Mr. Assumed Name. I will have my clerk bring up the money right away." It was the thrill, not of the chase, but of the standing still, of remaining so calm and composed and genuine that, for just long enough, you could fool the world and spin it on your finger. These were the moments that he lived for, when he was really alive, and his thoughts flowed like quicksilver, the very air sparkled. Later that feeling would present its bill. For now, he flew. He was back in the game, but for now, by the light of the burning yesterdays, he waltzed with Miss Dearheart while the scratch band scratched away. Then she went home to bed, puzzled but smiling oddly, and he went up to his office, which was missing the whole of one wall, and got religion as it had never been got before. The young priest of Offler, the crocodile god, was somewhat off balance at 4 a.m., but the man in the winged hat and golden suit seemed to know what should be happening, and so the priest went along with it. He was not hugely bright, which was why he was on this shift in the first place. "You want to deliver this letter to Offler," he said, yawning. An envelope had been placed in his hand. "It's addressed to him," said Moist, "and correctly stamped. A smartly written letter always gets attention. So I've also brought a pound of sausages, which I believe is customary. Crocodiles love sausages." "Strictly speaking, you see, it's prayers that go up to the gods," said the priest doubtfully. The nave of the temple was deserted, except for a little old man in a grubby robe dreamily sweeping the floor. "As I understand it," said Moist, "the gift of sausages reaches Offler by being fried, yes? And the spirit of the sausages ascend onto Offler by means of the smell, and then you eat the sausages?" No, not exactly, not at all," said the young priest, who knew this one. "It might look like that to the uninitiated, but as you say, the true sausagidity goes straight to Offler. He, of course, eats the spirit of the sausages. We eat the mere earthy shell, which, believe me, turns to dust and ashes in our mouth." "And that would explain why the smell of sausages is always better than the actual sausage, then," said Moist. "I've often noticed that." The priest was impressed. "Are you a theologian, sir?" "I'm in a similar kind of work," said Moist. "But what I'm getting at is this. If you were to read this letter, it would be as though Offler himself was reading it, right? Through your eyeballs, the spirit of the letter would ascend to Offler, and then I could give you the sausages. The young priest looked desperately around the temple. It was way too early in the morning. When your god, metaphorically, doesn't do much until the sandbanks have gotten nice and warm, the senior priests tend to lie in as well. I suppose so, he said reluctantly, but wouldn't you rather wait until Deacon Jones gets... I'm in rather of a hurry, said Moist. There was a pause. I brought some honey mustard, he added, the perfect accompaniment to sausages. Suddenly, the priest was all attention. What sort, he said. Miss Edith Leacold's Premium Reserve, said Moist, holding up the jar. The young man's face lit up. He was low in the hierarchy and barely got more sausage than Offler. God, that's expensive stuff, he breathed. Yes, it's the hint of wild garlic that does it, said Moist. Perhaps I should wait until Deacon. The priest grabbed the letter and the jar. No, I can see that you're in a hurry, he said. I'll do it right away. It's probably a request for help, yes? Yes, I'd like Offler to let the light of his eyes and the gleam of his teeth shine on my colleague Tolliver Grote, who is in the Lady Sybil Hospital, said Moist. Oh, yes, said the acolyte, relieved. We often do this sort of... And I would also like $150,000, Moist went on. Ankh-Morpork dollars preferred, of course, but other reasonably hard currencies would also be acceptable. There was a certain spring in his step as Moist walked back to the ruin of the post office. He'd sent letters to Offler, and Blind Io, all the important gods, and also to Enoya, a minor goddess of things that stick in drawers. Often, but not uniquely, a ladle, but sometimes a metal spatula, or rarely a mechanical egg whisk that nobody in the house admits to ever buying. The desperate mad rattling and cries of, how can it close on the damn thing but not open with it? Who bought this? Do we ever use it? Is as praise unto Enoya. She also eats corkscrews. She had no temple and was handled by a jobbing priestess in Cable Street, but Moist had a feeling that by the end of the day, Enoya was destined for higher things. He only picked her because, he liked the name. He'd leave about an hour. Gods tended to work relatively fast, didn't they? The post office was no better by grey daylight. About half the building was still standing. Even with the tarpaulins, the area under cover was small and dank. People were milling around uncertain of what to do. He'd tell them. The first person he saw was George Aggie, heading for him in high-speed hobble. Terrible thing, sir, terrible thing. I came as soon as... He began. Good to see you, George. How's the leg? What? It feels fine, sir. Closed in the dark, but on the other hand, that's a great saving in candles. What are we... You are my deputy while Mr. Grote is in the hospital, said Moist. How many postmen can you muster? About a dozen, sir, but what shall we... Get the mail moving, Mr. Aggie. That's what we do. Tell everyone that today's special is Shoetopolis for 10p, guaranteed. Everyone else can get on with cleaning up. There's still some roof left. We're open, as usual. More open than usual. But Aggie's word failed him, and he waved at the breeze. All this? Neither rain nor fire, Mr. Aggie, said Moist sharply. Doesn't say that on the motto, sir, said Aggie. It will by tomorrow. Jim. The coachman bore down on Moist, his enormous driving cape flapping. It was bloody gilt, wasn't it? He growled. Ours and around. What can we do for you, Mr. Lipwick? Can you still run a service to Pseudopolis today? Yes, said Jim. Harry and the lads got all the horses out as soon as they smelt the smoke. I only lost one coach. We'll help you damn right about that, but the trunks are running okay. You'll be wasting your time. You provide the wheels, Jim, and I'll give them something to carry. We'll have a bag for you at 10. You're very certain, Mr. Lipwick, said Jim, putting his head to one side. An angel came and told me in my sleep, said Moist. Jim grinned. That'll be it then. An angel, eh? Very present help in times of trouble, so I'm given to understand. So I believe, said Moist, and went up to the drafty, smoke-blackened three-walled cave that was the wreckage of his office. He brushed off the ash from the chair and reached into his pocket and put the smoking gnew's letter on his desk. The only people who know when a clock tower would break down must work for the company, right? Or used to work for it, more likely. That's how things happened. That bank in Stowe Lat, for example, he'd never been able to forge those bills if that bent clerk hadn't sold him that old ledger with all the signatures in it. That had been a good day. The Grand Trunk mustn't just make enemies, it must mass-produce them. And now this smoking gnu wanted to help him. Outlaw signalers. Think of all the secrets they'd know. He'd kept an eye open for clock chimes, and it was gone 9:15 now. What would they do? Blow up a tower? But people worked in the tower, surely not. Oh, Mr. Lipwick! It is not often that a wailing woman rushes into a room and throws herself at a man. It had never happened to Moist before. Now it happened, and it seemed such a waste that the woman was Miss McAlariat. She trotted forward and clung to the startled Moist, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Mr. Lipwick," she wailed. "Oh, Mr. Lipwick." Moist reeled under her weight. She was dragging at his collar so hard that he was likely to end up on the floor, and the thought of being found on the floor with Miss McAlariat was, a thought that just couldn't be thoughted. The head would explode before thoughting it. She had a pink hair grip in her grey hair. It had little hand-painted violets on it. The sight of it, a few inches from Moist's eyes, was curiously disturbing. Now, steady on, Miss McAlariat, steady on," he muttered, trying to keep the balance for both of them. "Oh, Mr. Lipwick." "Yes, indeed, Miss McAlariat," he said desperately. "What can I do for—" "Mr. Aggie said the post office won't ever be rebuilt. He says Lord Veterinary will never release the money. Oh, Mr. Lipwick, I dreamed all my life of working on the counter here. My grandmother taught me everything. She even made me practice sucking lemons to get the expressions right. I passed it all on to my daughter, too. She's got a voice that'll take the skin off paint. Oh, Mr. Lipwick." Moist searched wildly for somewhere to pat the woman, someplace that wasn't soaked or out of bounds. He settled for her shoulder. He really needed Mr. Grote. Mr. Grote knew how to deal with things like this. "It's all going to be all right, Miss McAlariat," he said soothingly. "And poor Mr. Grote," said the woman, sobbed. "I understand he's going to be fine, Miss McAlariat. You know what they say about Lady Sybil. Some people come out alive. I really hope he does," he added to himself. "I'm quite lost without him." "It's all so dreadful, Mr. Lipwick," said Miss McAlariat, determined to drain the bitter cup of despair to the very dregs. "We're all going to be walking the streets." Moist held her by the arms and pushed her gently away while fighting against a mental picture of Miss McAlariat walking the streets. "Now you listen to me, What is your first name, by the way?" "It's Iodine, Mr. Lipwick," said Miss McAlariat, snuffling into a handkerchief. "My father liked the sound." "Well, Iodine, I firmly believe that I will have the money to rebuild it by the end of the day," said Moist. "She's blown her nose on it, and yes, she's going to put it back up the sleeve of her cardigan. Oh, gods." "Yes, Mr. Aggie said that, and there's talk, sir. They say you sent the gods letters asking for money." "Oh, sir, it's not my place to say so, but gods don't send you money." "I have faith, Miss McAlariat," said Moist, drawing himself up. "My family has been an annoyance for 5 generations, sir," said Miss McAlariat. "We rattled the drawers every day, and we never got anything solid, as you might say, excepting my granny, who got an egg beater she didn't remember putting there, and we're sure that was an accident." Mr. Lipwick, someone asked. They say the clerks—" "Oh, I'm so sorry." The sentence ended in syrup. Moist sighed and turned to the grinning newcomer in the charcoal-rimmed doorway. "Yes, Mr. Aggie. We heard the clerks had come down again, sir. To Zoodopolis," said Aggie. "How unfortunate," said Moist. "Come, Miss McAlariat, come, Mr. Aggie, let's move the mail." There was a crowd in what remained of the hall. As Moist had observed, the citizens had an enthusiasm for new things. The post was an old thing, of course, but it was so old that it had magically become new again. A cheer greeted Moist when he came down the steps. Give them a show, always give them a show. Ankh-Morpork would applaud a show. Moist commandeered a chair, stood on it, and cupped his hands. "Special today, ladies and gentlemen," he shouted above the din. "Mail to Zoodopolis reduced to 3 pence only. 3 pence. Coach goes at 10. If anyone has clerk's messages lodged with unfortunate colleagues in the Grand Trunk Company and would care to get them back, we will deliver them for free." This caused an additional stir, and a number of people peeled away from the crowd and hurried off. "The post office, ladies and gentlemen," yelled Moist. "We deliver." There was a cheer. "Do you want to know something really interesting, Mr. Lipwick?" said Stanley, hurrying up. "And what's that, Stanley?" said Moist, climbing down off the chair. "We're selling lots of the new $1 stamps this morning. And do you know what? People are sending letters to themselves." "What?" said Moist, mystified. "Just so the stamps have been through the post, sir. That makes them real, you see. It proves they've been used. They're collecting them, sir, and it gets better." "How could it get better than that, Stanley?" said Moist. He looked down. Yes, the boy had a new shirt showing a picture of the penny stamp and bearing the legend, "Ask me about stamps." Still, lad want Teamer and Spools to do them their own set, and other cities are asking about it too. Moist made a mental note. We'll change the stamps often and offer stamps designed to every city and country we can think of. Everyone will want to have their own stamps rather than lick Veterinary's backside. And we'll honor them too, if they ever are male. And Mr. Spool will express his gratitude to us in very definite ways. I'll see to it. Sorry about your pins, Stanley. Pins, said the boy. Oh, pins. Pins are just metal pointy things, sir. Pins are dead. And so we progress, thought Moist. Always keep moving. There may be something behind you. All we need now is for the gods to smile on us. I think they'll smile a little broader outside. Moist stepped out into the daylight. The difference between the inside and outside of the post office was less marked than formerly, but there was still a lot of people. There were a couple of watchmen too. They'd be useful. They were already watching him suspiciously. Well, this was it. It was going to be a miracle. Actually, it bloody well was going to be a miracle. Moist stared up into the sky and listened to the voices of gods.